Jackson and the parrot together learned many words, especially every curse word that Jackson knew. He taught that parrot. So they got most of the curse words. Okay, you haven't heard those things, but actually people out there sometimes swear. I know. So just be ready. But think of most of the words you know today, and also unique curse words for the time. Every generation makes up their own curse words. Isn't that wonderful? We taught that parrot to curse. Basically, he did it to also annoy people. Somebody didn't like, he'd just say this key word. We're not sure exactly what word it was. And the parrot would just start screaming obscenities. And whoever it was would leave. And if anybody didn't like, he'd have the parrot scream. So someone thought Jackson loved this parrot, spent hours learning with the parrot. Jackson spent so much time, we should have the parrot at the funeral. Now, the funeral, they wouldn't have the body there. This is pre-embalming. You know, they would bury it as soon as they could, for obvious reasons. Embalming would be invented during the Civil War. Makes sense to get bodies back north. Well, interestingly, to start Monday with Bob. They have the parrot there, and they're giving all these eulogies. And Thomas Hart Benton of Missouri, senator, prominent Democrat, the guy who came up with the joint resolution, he was giving part of the eulogy about what an influence Jackson was, and somebody lifted the hood over the cage. The parrot was in. And Benton said the word. And the parrot just started screaming obscenities. Every word the parrot could. And parrots are loud. And just screaming them. They put the hood back over, and the parrot was on a roll. And just kept going, and that basically ended the funeral. And I'm sure Jackson would have enjoyed that way to go. And one more thing about Jackson. He would have to be the first president with an assassination attempt. Richard Lawrence, who would later be acquitted, the first one on a federal case for, and this is what they called it, for reasons of insanity, he tried to murder Jackson. He thought Jackson was keeping him away from becoming king of France. Okay, so he had 2 pistols. Now, these are flintlock pistols. This is 1835. And he walked up to Jackson, who was taking a walk outside. There's Jackson right there. A walk outside the White House. There were no guards. No one could imagine would try to murder the president. This was inconceivable. Lawrence walked up with 2 pistols, pulled out the first one, then boom, fired. Pulled the trigger, click, nothing. Threw the pistol down, everyone's like, oh, I just couldn't believe it. Other pistol, click. Nothing happened. Later on, they looked at the pistols. There was no reason they could see why the pistols did not fire. Yet both of them clicked. Everybody reacted. Everyone just kind of like this. Jackson was the first to react, proceeded to pull Richard Lawrence down and nearly beat him to death with his cane. They had to pull Jackson off. And I love this picture of it. The favorite part is this guy. But he's going, hey guys, what's up? Oh, but that's the first assassination attempt. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking, but how would you handle that if you made it out of Legos? Yes, I have a book on presidential assassinations, all with Lego characters. I'm not making that up. So, here is a Lego version of Jackson swinging the cane at Lawrence. Yes, that's all the presidential assassinations or plots, all the way up to the attempt to, there were a couple attempts to assassinate President Obama. That's where, and so with that, oh God, there's, yeah. In fact, somebody fired an assault rifle into the window of the White House when Obama was president. Yeah.
Is it just a regular thing that happens with every president?
Well, not quite regular, just that people don't talk about it. You'd be surprised how few people know it, which always amazes me. But it's in Lego.
Yay.
It's in Lego version. Yes, this was a gift from a student, and it was one of those, like, yeah, open up. This is awesome. So I'll pull this out again. The assassination attempts of McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman and 2 on Gerald Ford in 1 month, 1975. So let's get back to this then. Oh, one more thing. So Jackson died, a really complex person who saved the Union, represented what we consider democracy in this country, and also some horrific things, slavery and Indian removal. But every other president did the same thing. So he was asked in 1844, any regrets? Now you don't have to write this down. I just put this up there because it's a great quote. Any regrets? And his response, okay, Henry Clay, but the other one, okay, I can, all right. Yeah, that's him in 1844. And he couldn't eat. He was in rough shape, but still probably the toughest human being ever to be president. Moving on, that's a statue, another me trying to be artsy, with the White House in the background from Lafayette Park. And Jackson is rightfully so controversial as everything. And we have controversy in American history and how open to interpretation, good and bad. I like that statue. So let's get to Polk. Polk is now president. Fierce, young hickory, Napoleon of the stump. Also, if you look at the picture and see the spots, the negative for early photography was silver oxide on a piece of glass. And so any imperfection, like bubbles in the glass, would come through, especially when they made a copy of the negative onto another piece of glass. So that's why you get these spots. So sometimes they fill them in, like I like that one because you can still see the scratches and the spots on the glass. And Polk, who, don't mess with Polk, he had 4 goals. And he's one of the few presidents in American history that every single one of his goals he achieved. How he achieved them, that's a different story. So first thing, they lowered the tariff. Secondly, they created an independent treasury to distribute money outside of the banking system. So it would do 2 banks, but it'd be outside of it. And this is the basic system that would be used till 1913. There's actually some really good elements of it that are better than the Federal Reserve System now. I think it's arguable, but also has some drawbacks. They signed a treaty with Britain about Oregon. He talked 5440 or 5, but didn't mean it. They just compromised and extended the treaty line of 1818, the 49th parallel, to the sea. So under Polk, in his first year, the United States became that continental nation that everybody said. Sea to sea. Pretty amazing changes. But this is still Mexico. And he wanted California. Texas was already in the Union. The Mexican War was not fought to get Texas. I'm saying that because a lot of people say it, I've heard people say it a lot. But he wants California. The problem is, Mexico is furious. They ousted Santa Anna. The government's in shambles, the army's in shambles, but they're not going to forgive the United States for annexing Texas. So, if that's the goals, first off, I thought this was funny, so I showed this to you. That's supposed to be a little thing for burning garbage. Instead of a big thing to burn garbage, a small thing they call the baby incinerator. I'm opposed to this. And what's going on in Britain? And one more thing. You people, like when you were young, you had car seats. We didn't have car seats. We had hammocks. Yeah, that's real.
Doesn't interfere with their vision.
Yeah. Well, they just spin it. It doesn't happen.
1 minute installation.
See? Okay. Now to the Mexican-American War. So, by the way, who lost the war? Was the country that comes first, right? Just like. And look at that beautiful. But I'll look at your eyes. I could tell. Yeah, it switched, didn't it? Who lost? Because they come first. Just like what game?
No.
Cat Ridge. Yes. Like it's back spinning on its axis again, back to normal. So the first mission was to send John Slidell. That's a picture of him. He was a Confederate diplomat during the Civil War. And I like this picture. He's kind of got that. Yeah. We can't hold that for like 5 seconds. So, but remember, any movement would be like a blur. The exposure times are so long. They tried to buy California, and basically a three-pronged thing. Make the Rio Grande the southern border of the United States. I'll get to that more in a second. Forgive U.S. citizens' claims to Mexico. It's called U.S. claims. What that means is this. The Mexican government owed money to U.S. citizens. They bought Mexican bonds. And the U.S. would essentially pay those bonds. And it's going to be, that's over $3 million back then, which was significant. That's a lot of money. The U.S. would say, we'll pay back your debt. And we want to buy California and New Mexico. If you look at this map, this orange blob right here, this is what they consider New Mexico. This massive area. And so that. And what was the Mexican reaction to the Slidell mission? They totally ignored him and sent him home. No, we're not going to do this. You should never have annexed Texas. Mexico was furious and wouldn't listen to him. And so with that, the Slidell mission, Polk tried to come up with a two-pronged strategy to coerce Mexico into giving the United States California. They knew Mexico's financial problems, so they thought we could take advantage of that. So they tried to buy California, failed. What does he know? Plan number one, provoke a war along the Rio Grande. So the Rio Grande was the southern border of Texas claimed. And this is significant because if you follow the Rio Grande up into New Mexico and Colorado, that's a lot of land. The old Chaos province was at the New H River right here. And this is what Mexico claimed. Right here was the border. So this is disputed territory. And so they sent, the United States Army is tiny, less than 20,000 men. And so they sent a couple regiments, about 2,000 men, under a very experienced War of 1812 veteran, Zachary Taylor. And they marched down to the Rio Grande River. Why? To provoke a reaction from Mexico. To aggressively patrol, hoping that Mexico does something so the United States has an excuse to do what? Declare war. So we're going to coerce Mexico, thinking Mexico can't fight a war, so it'll be quick. If it's a long war, it's doubtful the United States could win. A short a war, we figure Mexico is too weak, they'll just say, take it. That's what we're hoping. The strength relationship now compared to Mexico, United States is a bigger, richer country. You think, oh yeah, United States would defeat Mexico. Back then, it wasn't quite as cut and dry. So he marched down here. Now Taylor, prominent general, he was a Whig too. He was a Whig, and he didn't approve of this. He was a plantation owner from Louisiana. He'd been in the army for a very long time. The men kind of adored him, but he was opposed, but followed orders. He thought this was immoral to provoke a war from Mexico for conquest. He kind of wanted the land, but he wanted to buy it. But he still did it and marched south. And Taylor was not a general, a real big stickler for like regulation or like having exactly shined buttons or thing like that. He cared about how they fought. In fact, in battle, he wore a straw hat and a flannel shirt. He didn't even wear he was in a brigadier 1-star. This picture's going to be taken when he's a 2-star major general. He got promoted. By the way, you should probably get that checked. That does not look good. That's one of those bubbles in the glass. And so with that, and the men liked him. And that's kind of an issue because he had a nickname that actually terrified the Democrats. The men called him Old Rough and Ready. And Old Rough and Ready, doesn't that sound a little bit like Old Hickory? And isn't that a perfect thing for president? Old Hickory, Old Tippecanoe, Old Rough and Ready. This actually worried Democrats. but he was the best general and closest one there. So he marched to here, and it happened. On April 25th, 1846, American dragoons were attacked by Mexicans. It's called the Thornton Affair. Under Philip Thornton was the captain in charge of a company of dragoons. By the way, anybody know what a dragoon is? Yes, it's a fire-breathing lizard. And we had all these fire-breathing lizards. We could have taken over the world. Bad news. It's not fire-breathing lizards. Are you disappointed? They're mounted infantry. They would ride horses and then dismount to fight. So they could move very quickly. So they called them dragoons. They were attacked. But here's the thing. Taylor's forces have been aggressively patrolling on both sides of the Rio Grande. The Rio Grande is actually a very shallow, small river. It starts in Arizona really dry. It's not a big river at all. I always thought it was big because it's the border of U.S. and Mexico. It's not this massive river like the Mississippi. No, it's a tiny little river. So horses could ford it almost anywhere along the Mexican border. And they were crossing south of the Rio Grande to provoke the Mexicans. It was undoubtedly, you cross south of the Rio Grande, there's no doubt that's Mexican soil. And they were attacked by Mexicans. But we don't know to this day what side of the border. You have to get that down. We don't know. We don't know. They very well could have been attacked south of the border. When Thornton got back, he said north of the border, but he was south of the border at some time. To this day, we don't know. It's clouded in mystery. A lot of, especially Whigs, said he was south of the border, and this war was based upon a lie. Because when Polk heard about this a little bit over a week later, he asked for a declaration of war, claiming that without a doubt, they were attacked north of the Rio Grande. And this is the spot that the state of Texas put up. There was a star here. The star is back now, I guess. By the way, it says the spot where American blood was shed on American soil. This was really controversial. But Polk said, we know for certain, I know for certain, that they were north of the Rio Grande, and this was an unprovoked attack on American soldiers. What was he doing when he said that to Congress? He's lying. He is lying to get into a war for conquest. And would this happen again? Yes. The U.S. would do something similar for the Spanish-American War. A couple of little conflicts. Also battles with American Indians. Biggie would be, there's this civil war going on in this country called South Vietnam. And we would get involved in that with a lot we call the Vietnam War. It happened, the war was going on in your lifetime, but you weren't born yet. The President of the United States claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. He knew they did, so the United States must invade. And not only did he not know that, they did not have weapons, and that lead to the Iraq War in your lifetime. That's 2003. Most of you were born in 2004, right? Who's 2004? Who's 2005? Wow. Who's way before that? Okay, moving on. So, nobody 2003, 2002, 1992. Anybody just literally like school? I guess I do, I never left. But, and this would be controversial. The United States would declare war. And the next year, Whigs elected a bunch of members of Congress against the war, including an unknown Republican from Springfield, Illinois, a lawyer named Abraham Lincoln. I love that picture of Lincoln. He was a big guy, but his hands, just huge hands. Well, one of the first moves, about really the only move Lincoln did, in opposition to an appropriations bill, a spending bill, Lincoln stood up and said, show us the spot where American blood was shed. And this was soon be dubbed the spot resolution, implying that they were lying about the spot, that it was actually south of the border. The spot resolution failed, but Lincoln would get a little notoriety within the Whig Party. The first time Lincoln would be heard about, he would lose for re-election, get pounded, stomped, and would not be elected again until when? Yeah, president in 1860 as a complete unknown. But his name was known in like elite circles as a competent politician and not too radical. Well, the big issue for the Whigs, no expansion of slave power. They didn't mind so much getting the land, but slave state, slave power. We talked about what slave power was. Now, let's go back to that picture. Remember, the state of Texas put that up. American blood, the spot were American blood. That was a direct attack by the state of Texas on Lincoln. This was made well after the Civil War. This was made actually early 1900s, and it showed their hatred of Abraham Lincoln, which Abraham Lincoln was going to be despised in the South, at least by people who were not descendants of slaves. So that's why that's on there. Part two of the plan was to engineer a revolt in California, kind of like what happened in Texas. The revolt actually happened a couple months after the declaration of war, but it still happened anyways. And as you can see from this beautiful valley scene in Northern California near, give me a stick, Crescent City. Oh, we're back. And these were American immigrants to California, but also Mexicans there, and they revolted against Mexican rule. And they would revolt. This would be the first flag of California and the California Republic, and the U.S. helped. A U.S. naval squadron just happened to be right off of, excuse me, right off of San Francisco, just when the revolt began. I mean, literally just off the coast, ready to basically blockade San Francisco so Mexico could not get reinforcements in. Under a Commodore named Stockton, so yes, Stockton, California, be named after him. And John C. Fremont right there. Notice the Pathfinder had led an expedition through Oregon country and then down into California, supposedly making maps. But he and his 200 soldiers just happened to be near Sacramento when the revolt began. You get the point? And they joined the revolt. So the U.S. helped California revolt. They would declare independence and call themselves, as you can see from the flag, or ever saw the flag of California, the Bear Flag Republic. So it's just basically a piece of canvas, and they painted on a star and a bear and stenciled in this. We don't have a color version of this flag. In 1906, during the Great San Francisco earthquake and fire, this flag was burnt. Caught fire and was destroyed. Which is sad. They lost that. So we know copies of it, but that's it. So now we can say we're trying to get California. And the plan was get as many reinforcements, as many volunteers as possible, and march into Mexico and win one big battle. Mexico would say it's not worth it, and just give us California. That's what we're hoping. One big battle, they figure get it over quick. So Zachary Taylor marched south. So many recruits came from the south, especially one state, Tennessee, that state to this day is known as the volunteer state, because so many volunteers came from that state. If you know anything about the University of Texas, their nickname's the Volunteers, and that's why. And so with that, we'll get to the Battle of Monterey, a 3-day slugfest, where a few thousand American soldiers fought a couple thousand Mexicans at a fortified citadel on a mountaintop. Lithographs were a big deal, so there's a lithograph of it. In a seesaw battle that was turned by superior American officers, U.S. Naval Military Academy training officers. Much better than the Mexican kind of crony system. Where did the United States train officers? At what place? West Point, copying the French. And also better cannon, which I'll get to in a second. Monterey was a big victory. Big victory. And did the Mexicans quit? No. The Mexicans said, fine, but Mexico City is 1,000 miles to the south, and we don't care. What are you going to do? And we're at 7,000 feet up. What are you going to do? Well, there's only one thing you can do. Ring the bell. And on that note, I do have a little bit of reading where I totally forgot. The end of chapter 12, 538 to 547, is about abolitionists. I originally was going to sign this over Thanksgiving, but I decided only to do chapter 13. I was due on Wednesday, so. Thank you. We'll see you. Goodbye. I'll try to remember. I believe you.
Okay, thank you.
538 to 547. 9 pages.
My bad.
But we're not done with him. We have more of him. Except he's truly evil.
Yeah.
Most of the Scooby-Doo villains are kind of comically evil.
He's just like.
Yeah, I know. We're not done with him. We will get back to him. No matter how hard we try. No. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to get out here. Go! Well, play. Big play. Well done.
Is the quiz on the whole chapter 11 or just?
Chapter 11, because I think those pages are chapter. There's a naval base. What's it? Dude, I'm not ready.
Dude.
It's a habit.
Are you gonna post that?
I am today, but I'm actually kind of rushed right now because Urban Outfitters has 50% off right now.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Yeah, it emailed me and I was like, dude, I can't get my phone. I'm doing Spanish since I was doing and I got in trouble. But wait,
It'll be fine if you do your lunch.
you would think if I got everything's gonna be sold out.
Are you trying to buy those?
Dude, unless but
Are you trying to buy those shirts?
yeah, I am.
Yeah. I like those shirts.
I'm thinking we should have a quiz. Half sheet of paper.
Oh, dude.
Um,
I'm not gonna papers cut off.
also, maybe test the next.
And don't forget, next month is limbo month.
Is Limbo maybe you're
Ready to limbo.
I'm
not.
I feel rushed.
Yeah.
And then
One line, so.
wait, what did you say?
I know exactly what I do.
What are some of the thoughts?
I need to try to convince themselves that it's good and like
Say it to everyone.
is that
Try to do people is good. Come here.
that like wage slavery was bad because like the North was bad and like the slaves were treated so well.
I'm so
So
not.
I know what institution
It's really our institution.
Cotton, these people who did not want slavery, right?
Did you I think it looks
Nat Turner was originally
3 or 4 hours. Not nuts.
not
Half sheet of paper, 1 to 10.
Okay, I got that stuff in my head. It's fine. Turner was successful.
you got it.
1 to 10.
Denmark was
And let's make them all uphill.
no, because they were mayonnaise.
Denmark.
I did not like Denmark.
Why did you like Denmark?
They were weird things with mayonnaise. I don't like it.
How could I do
Denmark, not as much as Belgium. Go to Belgium. They put mayonnaise on everything. They put mayonnaise on
Denmark
everything.
is worse.
No.
Belgium's in Germany.
Belgium is Germany?
Belgium, Brussels. Belgium, Brussels. Belgium, Oh my, Brussels is the capital of Belgium.
Yes!
I
Yay!
know that from McGinley. Man, I don't know, something about Denmark makes me mad. I hate Denmark. I swear. Dude,
Tell me
men
one
is
thing
from
bad thing about Denmark that doesn't involve ladies.
The trolls. There's some trolls. And their bikers are scary. The bikers, they're bad. I hate them.
Hell's Angels? Okay. 1 to 10, are there any questions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so the Nat Turner. So yeah, that was one-handed and a repeat, right?
Run that to, yes, that's right.
Was that in that was
Virginia,
Virginia.
1831.
And then the Denmark one was in
Denmark,
Massachusetts.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Massachusetts didn't have slavery by then.
Oh. So Denmark is in Massachusetts.
Wait.
The
South Carolina. Denmark, Vesey.
Denmark, South Carolina, and then Nat Turner. That's
What is it about Denmark?
Dude, just don't go there.
She says okay, so.
What are we?
And
I like Denmark and I like Belgium.
Cyber Mondays right now, and I'm getting notifications that it's stressing me out because I didn't do anything because I'm in some class.
It's Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
I gotta get out now.
2%
Okay, no
off.
questions? All right, my ink was running out. My ink was running out. Everything off and under your desk? Shall we do it?
What are you doing?
Sorry, it's a little bit faded. My ink was running out. Ooh, I'm looking for ink for what?
It's not, I found it.
Good job.
Those are gonna be hated in the South along with $5 bills. Okay, we'll do this again. Cole, I'm giving you 2 extra. Maybe. We'll get there, we'll get there. I could have done the other way, but I didn't want to. Get your own. Hand delivers. Oh, at the same time. Would you like a bonus question? Who was the first president to die in office? Okay, quasi-morbid question for the first Monday. Oh, we're still recording. Yeah, sure.